Despite not considering myself a cozy gamer, really, I peruse a lot of the cozy gamer Instagram and YouTube internet spheres, and one thing that I have been seeing a lot of recently are modded Joy-Con and Pro controllers for the Nintendo Switch. Now, I think the Switch is a really customizable console. I've mentioned that in a few of my accessory videos. There's so many different accessories, so many outer shells, soft shells, any like kind of accessory you could imagine for the Nintendo Switch, which is really cool. It really makes each console super individualized. I hadn't really started customizing my Switch until somewhat recently. In fact, one of the main things that made me start thinking like, hey, maybe I should add a little bit more of a personal touch to my Switch were actually my custom Joy-Cons that my partner gave me for Christmas 2 years ago. They look like the Animal Crossing Joy-Cons, but in fact these are reproduction shells with white buttons and white joysticks. And when he handed me these on Christmas, I was taken away. I was absolutely taken away. I hadn't known too much about like modding controllers, but I just knew these were sick and I love them, and they're still my favorite Joy-Cons to this day. However, as I started seeing more and more pop up on social media, I kind of started to wonder like, how easy is it to mod your controllers? Because like really, I see a lot of modded controllers on the internet, and I'm just kind of sitting here like, can I do it too? And then I kind of also started to think, other people probably also feel this way, having seen a lot of really cute and aesthetic customization options for their Switch. Is it easy to do? Is it super hard? Can anybody do it? What are the risks of modding your controllers, etc., etc., etc.? So that is the topic of today. And oh my gosh, I'm so excited for craft time. Hi everybody, my name is Alex, aka Quality, and welcome back to the channel. So to give a little context on my taking things apart and putting them back together history, because that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this video, I take apart flutes every so often just to do minimal repairs for some of my students, and I'm pretty good at that. But when it comes to taking apart furniture and putting it back together, I'm pretty terrible at that most of the time. Sometimes it's great, like I put my standing desk together, no problem. But the shelf that houses all of my Switch games that I got in college, I put together half backwards, and I haven't fixed it. I never took it apart to fix it because I just gave up. So this will be interesting. But before we actually get into modding the controllers and talking about them in the process, I want to give a very special shout out to Extreme Rate for sending me everything in this video. I've been thinking about doing this video like since I started the channel, and just very randomly one day they reached out to me being like, hey, we want to send you some shells, and I was like, so I'm modding 2 different types of controllers today. So I was told that actually doing Pro controllers first is way easier than Joy-Con. So very first, we're gonna do my Pro controller. I've had this Pro controller for, I don't even know, a few years at this point in time. And while I do like the classic black look, I'm ready for a change. So I'm really excited to do this one. And so for the Joy-Cons that we're gonna mod, these actually aren't mine. These are my mom's, which you wouldn't know just by looking at them. They're just the standard gray Joy-Cons, but ever since I got my Animal Crossing modded ones a few years ago, my mom's been really wanting to kind of spice up her Switch a little bit, so I let her pick out the Joy-Con shells in exchange for letting me use her Joy-Cons for the video, so hopefully I don't break them. And so now let's get into what they sent me to mod the controllers with. So for the Pro controller, I'm so excited about this color. It's like a matcha green Pro controller case, which looks so exciting. I picked this one out, but I'm really excited for this. It looks so cute, and I'm just so excited. So other thing I want to say about all the Extreme Rate stuff that they sent me to, every single thing that you get comes with a screwdriver and extra screws. This one just comes with 2 standard screwdrivers that you'll need. The other ones, which here's a spoiler for some of the other things that they got me, come with this nice kind of all-in-one screwdriver. So that's really nice. So every time that you buy something from Extreme Rate, it's always gonna come with these tools, which is very handy. In my case, I now have like 16 screwdrivers, but that's okay. And another thing that they sent me for the Pro controller is they actually sent me white buttons. I didn't ask for them, but I am going to use them because I think that'd be really cute with the matcha green shell. So super excited for those. And they also sent me a bunch of joysticks. I think for this one, I'm just gonna go with the green. The green doesn't exactly match. I think at some point in time I might just buy standard white ones to go with the buttons, but we're gonna try the green ones out for today. But they also sent me these lilac ones, which are pretty, these really cute pink ones, and these like little teal ones. So those are super cute. I'm gonna hang on to those for any future customizations I might do, but I think for today we're gonna do the green. So moving the Pro Controller stuff off to the side for a second, the Joy-Con shells that my mom picked out, they're really cute. They're these like galaxy gold kind of like really pretty marbled looking ones. I really, really like them. They've got a really, really nice texture. Like all the gold ribboning is raised so you can feel it. They're really, really nice though. I'm really excited. She originally was gonna go with an atomic purple to match like, you know, the Game Boy Color atomic purple kind of deal, but she saw these, was like, I like these are classy, so these are the ones that she picked out. I think another thing with their Joy-Con shells too is all of them come with bonus buttons, so say you lose a button in the process of putting them together, you have spares, which is actually really, really nice. On the same vein as buttons, they also sent me some of their new little buttons. They're like very translucent. I'm gonna take them out. They sent me 4 sets of them. So they're purple but clear on top, and they look really, really, really cute. This is specifically for the right Joy-Con, so I'm gonna put these in for the right Joy-Con and then keep the left Joy-Con with just the original black buttons, just to see how it looks. But they're really cute. They sent me those, and then they also sent me blue ones, pink ones, and white ones, which I think the white ones would also look pretty cool. And then finally, they sent me one other bonus thing, which I didn't even know that I was getting, which was super sweet of them to send over. They actually sent me, which I'm gonna open, they sent me white Joy-Con shells. And they feel really, really close to like the original Joy-Con shells too. They have that very like matte texture, which is really cool. And they also sent me a back plate for my Switch too, if I wanted to do an entire customization of my whole Switch. I'm not gonna do that for this video. I think that's a little too much for me today, but if you're interested and assuming I do a good job on the controllers and wanna see me customize more stuff, I would do this. Let me know. Let me know if you wanna see an entire Switch like shell swap, because that would be kind of cool. But I'm still really grateful they sent me these. These are really, really cool. And at some point in time, I'd love to get another set of Joy-Con so I could customize and have a pair of white ones too. So very nice. Thank you, Extreme Rate. Very sweet of you. And that's basically all of the unboxing type stuff. But before we get into the bulk of the video, which will be me taking apart the controllers and reshelling them, I do want to give a disclaimer. This is not a tutorial on how to put these controllers together or how to mod your controllers. I kind of just want to talk about the process, and if it was easy for me doing it as a newcomer to modding controllers and stuff. There are lots of tutorials online. Extreme Rate has their own, and there are a lot of other YouTubers that do a fantastic job. However, I'm just going to show the footage of me taking things apart, putting on the new shells, and then kind of talking over them, and my tips and tricks throughout the process as well. So I hope you enjoy, and let's switch the camera. And first up, we have the Nintendo Switch Pro controller is the first controller we're going to be modifying. I was told that this one was way easier to do than the Joy-Con, so while I was still pretty nervous going into this one, I had that kind of in the back of my mind like, hey, this is the first step. This is the easier of the two, and hopefully I don't break anything, because Pro controllers are pretty darn expensive. Also, hi, now I'm in the voiceover zone. I've never done this before, but this is pretty interesting, so hopefully it's going okay. But so as you can see here, the very first thing you need to do when you are modifying your Pro controller is you have to unscrew the 2 screws at the bottom of the arms. This is another kind of cool thing about the Pro controller too. Say you're still too nervous to do a full shell swap, you can actually only swap out the arms if you wanted to. You can make them look like the Splatoon 2 or Splatoon 3 controllers that were kind of exclusive for a little bit, or just put your own kind of custom arms on there. There are a lot of different ways that you can just customize it just doing the arms, and if that was your plan, that would probably only take you about 5 or so minutes to get the original arms off and the new arms on. So it's kind of cool that like the Pro controller is so easily customizable. However, we're doing the whole gosh darn thing. All in all, I think the modification took about 45-ish minutes, which granted, I did take a few tea breaks, but all in all, it was really, really easy to take apart. It's just a lot of unscrewing and screwing things back in, as you kind of see here. We're taking off kind of the backplate that houses the battery, which we're still in the easy part of the Pro controller at this point in time. There's no cables we have to move, nothing really to worry about other than not stripping screws, which, funny enough, that did kind of happen to me a little bit. So you might notice that I'm using just a normal Phillips here. So even though I had a surplus of screwdrivers given to me by Extreme Rate just because they come packaged in with all of the things that you buy from them, a few of them seem to kind of get really dull really quickly. I don't know why. I don't know if it was even the screwdriver's fault or what, but just some of them just kind of, they had me a little bit worried when unscrewing things. So I kind of swapped back and forth between the ones that they gave me and my own screwdrivers, and that seemed to work out pretty well. Some of the screws themselves might also have just been finicky because these screws are OEM, they're original, and so they might have also just gotten worn down by this point in time too. So we've taken out the battery, and now we are going to unscrew this kind of middle part, which underneath this is basically the meat and potatoes of the Pro Controller. That's where the one danger zone, as I'm going to call it, is housed, which you'll see when we lift this up. And of course I threw a screw. So a little context on while I was doing this. So it was in the middle of an ice storm outside of my window, and the wind was howling. My room is the coldest room in the house, so it was really, really, really cold. You'll see more in the Joy-Con portion of the video that I started to get a little bit more clumsy, but for right now I was doing pretty good. So now we lift up this middle portion, and underneath this, you're gonna have one ribbon cable that you have to disconnect. And so, great thing, Extreme Rate sent me some really, really, really nice tweezers. Like, they're super nice. They're super duper nice, and they're specifically for things like this. So it's really hard to see in the video, but what you do there is you actually unhook the latch that has the ribbon cable in place, and then you just carefully put that off to the side. We'll deal with all of that later. So now we're taking out the screws to get the board out so we can get to the buttons, which, as I said, we were going to replace the original buttons with some really, really cute white buttons, which that's kind of the main aesthetic I feel I see on the internet, is like very cute shell and the white buttons. I just think it's a really, really classy look. And so there we remove the board, and we have access to the silicone caps that are kind of covering the buttons. This was the most tedious portion of this whole swap. Everything else went so smoothly. As I said, it was really, really quick. It was really easy. However, putting the buttons in the new shell was ridiculous. The nice thing is, and you'll see this with the Joy-Cons too, each hole for the buttons actually has a specific kind of notch. So you have to match the buttons with whatever ones will fit, so you won't have any risk of accidentally swapping the A button for the B button or anything like that. And that's for all of the buttons across the board. Some are pretty explanatory, like the D-pad, but things like the plus and minus buttons, they still have differences between them, so you don't accidentally swap them, which I think is really, really, really smart. However, what makes this super tedious is sometimes the buttons don't want to stay in place, and neither do the silicone covers. And it's so aggravating that it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating because you'd have to readjust them all the time just to get them to stay in place. So that was my biggest complaint about this whole thing. Okay, so for this next part, we have to now put the new joysticks into their spot. This was really scary because what you do is you pull up the original joysticks, and I was terrified of breaking something, but it actually is really, really easy. And the new ones go on really easy too. All you have to do is pop them down and they go in. It's awesome. It's really, really straightforward. So here, now I'm changing the shoulder buttons to the white ones, making sure they're all nice and clicky. Again, this was another kind of scary one. You'll notice a lot between the Pro Controller and the Joy-Cons that sometimes it'll feel like you're breaking things when in fact you're doing exactly what was intended. So it all works out just fine. I kind of skipped here. Reassembly is really, really easy. And yeah, so I'm just putting the shell back on here, which I have to say, the shell is nice. It has this really kind of soft matte-like feel to it. It's just so comfortable. I literally spent all day playing Fire Emblem Engage with it, and it was just so nice. And here I'm just checking all the buttons, making sure everything works. And yeah, this was a super easy shell swap. Honestly, it was really worth it just to freshen up my controller, and it was so easy that if I ever want to go back to the original one, it'll probably take me 15 minutes now that I've already done it. One thing though, I do think that the joysticks don't really match super duper well with the shell, so eventually I'm gonna swap those out for white sticks, but overall I'm just really happy with how this turned out. So next we move on to the Joy-Cons, and this is when things took a turn for the worst. So right now I'm doing the right Joy-Con, which is notoriously the harder of the two Joy-Cons to do due to the AR reader, which we'll get to that in a second, but I actually did the left Joy-Con off screen. Everything that could go wrong went wrong, and I am very fortunate that I did not break the controller. So you'll notice now that I have the Joy-Con open, there's a lot going on in there. And the left Joy-Con looks pretty similar on the inside, just different joystick location and a few different locations of some extra things. But what had happened was, when taking apart the left Joy-Con, I accidentally stripped a screw, or the screw was already stripped. I honestly don't know. I couldn't get it to turn whatsoever. So with my mother's permission, because these are her Joy-Cons, we quite literally and very carefully had to pry the Joy-Con open. And I was terrified because I thought that that's a surefire way to break things. But guess what? We didn't actually break anything there. However, my anxiety was already at an all-time high, so we'll see in a second. Right now we're taking out where the battery is, we're unscrewing a bunch of stuff, and you see that white little thing right at the very bottom? So that is the rumble motor, and in the left Joy-Con, you're supposed to remove it, just as you will see that I'm gonna remove it in the right one. But when I tried to get it out, there was some adhesive stuck to it, which is very typical of Joy-Cons that have never been worked on before. Is there's adhesive behind the battery and there's adhesive behind the rumble motor. And so I lifted it up, having watched a few other tutorials because I was really scared, and some people made it look so easy. So when I tried the same method that a lot of them tried, it failed miserably, and I ripped the rumble motor out from where it was supposed to be, and thankfully I didn't break it, and I didn't rip any cables. So it was very troublesome. So the left Joy-Con alone took me about 2.5 hours, mainly because I was trying to learn everything that I could, not break anything, and also I had to take a few breathers because the intensity was high. Thankfully, the right Joy-Con actually went a lot easier, kind of. I'm gonna say kind of, because there is a lot more to worry about here, a lot of extra parts, and not everything moves in the same way that it moves in the left Joy-Con. For the right Joy-Con, you want to keep a lot more things attached to one another than you do on the left. The left, you have a lot more freedom to unplug a bunch of cables, and that made it a lot easier to put back together. This one, it was a little tough because you have this huge mass. So you'll see right now, I'm trying to get to the buttons, and I've lifted the board up, but because of the AR sensor, there's actually a little metal frame that you also have to transfer from the original Joy-Con over to the new Joy-Con, which is all fine and dandy. However, it's so tough to get off. It's really painful. And so here I had another blunder. So I had said initially that the purple buttons were only for the right Joy-Con. I did not turn them around to find out that they were for the left Joy-Con, and I was a fool. And so this also goes back to what I was saying in the Pro Controller part, is the buttons are the most tedious part. The purple buttons, while lovely, and I'm so sad that I didn't get to use them for this, they don't have the thing where I can easily pinch them with with a set of tweezers on the back, like how the original ones do, but that wouldn't have even mattered. These did not want to stay in place. The silicone covers were so flimsy, and I don't understand how people can easily get them to stay in place. It didn't work for me. I had to take apart this Joy-Con 5 times because the buttons kept moving after I had already placed everything. Another big thing that you want to really be careful about with Joy-Cons is you want to make sure that you very carefully remove the dust cover for the joysticks. It's really important to make sure that you prevent drift as much as possible, and it just also makes sure that the Joy-Con itself isn't super duper loose. As you probably noticed, there's a lot of ribbon cables throughout this whole thing. So it's super important to have a reliable pair of tweezers in order to detach what you need to detach. You also just want to be gentle overall. Patience is key when taking apart these Joy-Cons because it's so easy to break things. Kind of, again, looking back at the left Joy-Con fiasco that I faced. There were so many instances where I could have broken everything, and I didn't. I did promise my mom that if I broke something, I would buy her a new pair of Joy-Con, so don't worry about that. But thankfully, everything worked out just fine in the end. So the right Joy-Con still took about 2 hours. By this point in time, I was winding down. I didn't finish it until about 11:30 at night, and I had started filming this video at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And yes, I took dinner breaks, I took tea breaks, I had to get up and walk around, but it was still a really, really long process for the first time around. It was definitely a learning experience all the way around, so absolutely, patience is key while doing this. Don't try to do it quickly your first time. Really take your time to make sure that you are unscrewing everything, that nothing is getting stripped or damaged in the process of how you're handling it, because that could cause you to lose a set of Joy-Cons. And I'm just so glad that I didn't. I'm just so glad that I didn't. Another point of issue that I had with this right Joy-Con specifically is you have the little AR sensor on the side, so you need to make sure that's nice and tucked before you try putting the shell back on. And this was also a little bit harder. So another key difference between the left and the right Joy-Cons is the shoulder buttons. They're really, really difficult to get back on. Super easy to take off, though it sounds like you're breaking something, but really, really difficult to get back on because you have to align the screws perfectly so that way they click down really nice and they're making sure that they're triggering the ribbon cable that's attached to them. So you really have to be precise. And that was probably one of the times that took me the longest. And then having to reattach the rail to the back side of the Joy-Con, just, it's really tedious. It's ultimately a really, really tedious process. Now that I've done it once, I do have a bit more confidence in myself that I think I can do it quicker, but it's still, I was not having a fun time. I was really not having a fun time, which makes me sad because I was so excited, but just so much went wrong so quickly, and it just was not nearly as easy as I thought it would be. And part of that, you know, as I explained, I'm not the best at taking things apart and putting them back together. It was really cold. By this point of the night, my hands were freezing, so I kept dropping screws, losing my grip, etc. So it was really tough. But as you can see here, we almost did it. The battery fell out, but we have almost done it. And the nice thing is, once it's all closed, all you have to do is put those 4 screws back together, which I should have mentioned at the beginning. So the 4 screws on the back of the Joy-Con, they are tri-wing screws, so you need to make sure that you have a tri-wing screwdriver, a Y00, I believe, and then everything else is a Phillips. So it is really easy. You don't need a ton of tools. I know some people have used spudgers, which I didn't need to use a spudger. I got everything apart pretty easily, but definitely recommend Phillips, a Y-wing screwdriver, and tweezers absolutely for dealing with all those ribbon cables. So it was a trial. I'm still really sad I didn't get to use the purple buttons, but don't worry, Extreme Rate, I promise the buttons you sent me are not gonna go to waste because I already have an idea for another pair of custom Joy-Cons that I'm going to use those buttons for. So it was an oversight. I think too, I might change out the buttons on this one to have the purple ones later on, but at this point, I couldn't do it. I had to be done. I just really, really had to be done. But the nice thing is the end product looks really, really nice, especially kind of with the black of the Switch. It's really nice. The Joy-Cons are really, really glossy, so be warned if you're not a fan of fingerprints, but they feel really nice. All the buttons were really good. I'm really, really happy and just relieved that nothing broke. And my mom was really happy with them too, and that's all I could ask for. So yay, I did my first Joy-Con shell swap. We did it, we modified controllers. Also, hi, it's now 2 days since I filmed the original portion of the video. I had to take a day kind of in between doing the modifications and filming this part. partly because I had the day off yesterday and I really wanted to just kind of chill because the day I did all of the recording was really stressful, but we did it and I am so happy. So let's kind of go over my finishing thoughts on the whole process. Unfortunately, my mom literally just left to go on a trip and I forgot to ask her to leave her Joy-Cons, so I can't show off her Joy-Cons again, but the nice thing is she really likes them. She's been using them a lot. We did have to fix one thing. Back kind of popped up, so I think the screw just wasn't in all the way. I just had to retighten the screws and they've been working just fine, so I'm really happy with that. And maybe I can get her to send a photo and I'll put it here or something. Because I'm already talking about the Joy-Cons, let's stay on the topic of the Joy-Cons. So while I think I would be able to put them all together and reshell Joy-Cons a lot faster now that I've already done it once, it was a long process the first time, like a really long process. Maybe some people it would be a lot shorter, but for me, I just had so many things go wrong and I was so honestly just nervous the whole time because I didn't want to break anything. There are so many small parts in the Joy-Cons that it's really hard to navigate, especially if you haven't followed a guide step by step. The other thing is there's also a lot of different guides for reshelling Joy-Cons. I used honestly a mix of 3 different ones. I used the extreme rate one and then I used a few other YouTubers that I found really helpful. And everybody has their own method of doing it. Some you keep a lot more things put together so that way it takes a little bit less time. Others you take a lot of things apart to make sure that everything stays working. But it was definitely an interesting experience. I think if you are somebody who's not super experienced with taking things apart, it might prove to be a little bit of a challenge for you. I'm not saying that it's not worth it though. I think ultimately, if you have the time, if you're able to set aside the time and you have the patience to do it, I really do think it's worth it if you're looking to spice up your Joy-Con a little bit. Fancy cases are all really nice, but say you want something a bit more permanent for your Joy-Cons, I think it's a really good option. It looks super duper clean and there's a lot of really cool designs out there, so you can really customize your Joy-Con however you want. The things you just have to really pay attention to are it's gonna take time, especially your first time. I've seen other people say that they're able to get pairs of Joy-Cons done within 20 minutes, but I think it'll take a little bit of time to get to that step, you know? So I think if you have the time, if you have the patience and the willingness to cross-reference everything you're doing and also start from scratch a few times, then I think it's worth it. But those are things that you really need to pay attention to before you get into the process of swapping out the shell on your Joy-Con. The Pro controller, however, was much easier, and that I'm confident that if I were to do it again, I'd be able to do it in 20 minutes. It's so easy, it's so straightforward, and that I do have the finished product. So you'll notice I did cover up the joysticks, the green joysticks. They were really starting to bug me, so I put some little cat thumb grips on them. And the nice thing is, even though the joysticks on a Pro controller are actually a little bit bigger than the ones on Joy-Cons, the thumb grips are still working. The thumb grips are still fitting, they haven't come off. And the nice thing is I took them off and they didn't stretch out. So awesome, I'm really happy with that. So that could be an option to customize a little bit on your Pro controller as well, but I just wanted to do it temporarily. I do still think I'm going to take out the green sticks and buy some white sticks just because I think it'll look a lot better, but I am in love with my Pro controller now. It's so cute, it's exactly me, it's one of my favorite colors of all time. And yeah, this was so easy. This was so easy that I know there are a lot more kind of cases coming out for Pro controllers. I honestly think that reshelling them is the way to go. I really do. Because again, it's so easy and there's so little room for things to go wrong while reshelling your Pro controller that I think rather than having to work and fight with a case to go over just the controller, it's different for the Switch because that's more of a box, but there's just so much more to have to deal with that I've never put a silicone case on my Pro controller, but I know some people have. I think it's just such a cleaner look. It's such a cleaner look. And I've had literally no problems with this at all. I played Fire Emblem Engage pretty much all day yesterday and it works perfectly. Everything is responding super duper well. Everything's nice and clicky. No mushiness at all. Everything is staying really nice and clicky. So I'm really happy with this. This was absolutely worth the time. So ultimately for both, I'm really, really glad that I learned how to swap out the shells for the Pro Controller and the Joy-Con. I would do both again, I really would. Pro Controller in a heartbeat. The Joy-Cons, I might need a little bit more convincing to do, or I have to find a shell that I really, really want to do. I mentioned in the voiceover too that I have an idea for the white shells that Extreme Rate also sent me. I kind of want to do like a white and pink aesthetic and make them like Kirby Joy-Cons. I don't know. I don't think I'll make a video out of that. I might post that on like Instagram or something like that, but I think that'd be a really, really cute idea. So I would do that again. I'd have to set aside a whole afternoon. I was anticipating this whole video to take me about 3 hours, and it's taken 3 days to really put together. So you know, but ultimately I learned a new skill, and if you're interested in doing it, I highly recommend it. I also really recommend Extreme Rate shells. Like, of all of the problems, none of them were Extreme Rates. So I'm really, really happy with the quality of the shells for both the Joy-Cons and the Pro Controller, especially the Pro Controller. Like, oh, I love this. I love this so much. I can't even express. It's so nice. It's so nice. And my mom is really happy with the quality of the Joy-Cons. So if you're interested in checking out any of their shells, I linked Extreme Rate in the description below. They're also really nice. And let me set up an affiliate code with them too. So if you go on Extreme Rate and see any shells that you might want to give a try, why not use my code and you'll get 10% off, and I'll get a little bit of a kickback from that as well, and I'd super appreciate it. But that's gonna do it for this video. If you like what you see here, why not consider liking the video? Maybe comment what shell swap was your favorite, and if you're not already, maybe consider subscribing. We have so many cool and exciting videos coming out over the next month. There's a reason for that I'm not gonna explain in this video, so stay tuned for that, but there's going to be a lot of content coming out in March, so stay tuned. But in the meantime, why not check out some of my Switch accessory videos, or even my PC desk accessories video. Both are really fun, both are kind of similar to this. And just again, thank you so much to Extreme Rate for sending me the shells, and also thank you to me for having such a cool and fun video idea. I'm gonna give myself a pat on the back for that one. Anyways, everybody, until the next time, goodbye!